There we are. So what we want to do, I hope that was a good time. Was that a good time to discuss? Good. What we want to do now is give you guys some time to either share things that came up in your discussion or to ask some questions related to the things that we're talking about today. And I'm excited to introduce you to a couple of my colleagues that were willing to join me today to help with this. So I want to introduce Christina here. So Christina is one of our senior clinicians. She's been with Harbor for how many years now?
About 4 years.
About
4 years now.
About 4 years.
Yeah.
And then Jessica here, Jessica Abraham. She's also one of our clinicians. She's been with us for about 2-ish years now. So, and I asked them both because they're both awesome, and they also very insightful about the things that we're talking about today. So just to introduce them a little bit more, I wanted to ask them to share just a little bit about their background with you, both in a clinical sense, but also they both have some really great and relevant ministry experience in their life too. So Christina, you want to share a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. And thank you guys for having us today too. Like Matt already mentioned, yeah, so we I've been working at Harbor for the past 4 years, and before that, I had been working through a private group practice in the Acton area, so servicing mostly teenagers and adults, 18 plus, and so for that, probably about 7 years, and so in most of the professional working life, I've been primarily working with depression, anxiety, and trauma, I would say, is focus areas. And since transitioning to Harbor full-time, I've been doing more integrative work, so being able to just integrate the Christian faith into the counseling practice and process. And so that's been really nice to be able to integrate scriptures and whatnot. Personally speaking, I've also been serving in the local church for many years, particularly doing youth and college ministry for about 10 years or a little bit more than that. Yeah, and so I've seen a lot of what comes through the youth groups in junior high and high school and college age students. Depression and anxiety is kind of like the bread and butter of therapy, and we see a lot of that in the youth group settings, but also been able to, just partner with, different ministries in the church, different church leaders in creating kind of youth mental health or crisis protocol, just because, the church that I've been going to, we didn't have a lot of resources starting out, but just being able to develop some of that together with leadership has been really helpful in helping parents and ministry leaders alike to recognize the issues and know roughly how to respond and then refer. So, it's a little bit about my background.
Hi, as Matt said, I'm Jessica Abraham, and I've been with Harbor for 2-ish years now, almost 2 years. Prior to that, I was at the Counseling Center at Gordon College up in Wenham, and I have, similar to Christina, seen a lot of clients struggling with anxiety and depression, as well as other areas as well. I primarily work with young adults, but my clients range from ages 16 up to mid to late 50s. And similarly, a lot of anxiety disorders, but also trauma. And personally, I grew up in India and moved to the States at around age 17. So along with spiritual integration, I really try to incorporate cultural integration, as that's something that's personally very important to me and I'm passionate about. And specifically at my work at Gordon College, there was a lot of homesickness, but also third culture kids, and just a lot of helping clients adjust to different cultures. And ministry-wise, I served on a lot of different youth ministry teams in various churches, and that was between years 2012 to 2021. And so, that's just some of my background.
Awesome. So one thing I forgot to mention is you see this slide that we have up right now. This is a list of resources that actually Jessica and Christina came up with to give you guys if you want to do some more learning on the subject of what we're talking about. This is another slide with very small text. So you can get really close to it and see it, or if you go to the website that is listed at the bottom of the screen there, or use the QR code, which will also take you there. We have a page that we put together on our website for you all to access this list of resources. It also has the slides from today that you can download there too. So I'll leave this up here throughout the time, but just wanted to mention what that's about. We would love to invite you guys to share either things that came up in your discussion time or questions that you have. Couple prefaces, or one main preface that I want to give to that is, I think for the interest of what we're here to do today and the time that we have, I think the best use of it would be to keep any questions kind of focused on the broader topic of mental health and kind of church impact, and avoid questions maybe about more specific issues per se. So especially like really complex issues like gender, sexuality, those types of issues, which are certainly very relevant, but would be hard for us to really give a substantive discussion around today. So trying to keep those questions around those broad topics. We have a couple folks with microphones. So if you have a question or something you want to share from your discussion, you can raise your hand and they can bring you a microphone. So where do we want to start? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to ask about spiritual warfare. You know, as we know, we read in the book of Ephesians chapter 6, and we know that we don't fight against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers of darkness. So as part of the work that you're doing, certainly there are situations where a person has a chemical issue. So that person might need to take a medication to help them with whatever is going on in their brain to be able to help them with a mental health issue. But then there's a spiritual aspect of it too. And as Paul tells us, that we're basically, you know, battling Satan and his demons. So I'm just wondering, you know, like, how do you guys handle it? You know, you guys must be prayerfully looking at your clients, patients, and, you know, asking for discernment. Lord, you know, help me to understand where this child, this adult, whatever is going through, and help me with my diagnosis of their difficulty.
Yeah, absolutely. Celtics fan, by the way. Glad to see the shirt. Big Celtics fan. That's a great question. He's asking how do we think about spiritual warfare and just the role of the spiritual side of mental health. And yeah, certainly, I think that to us is one of the benefits, but also necessities of having an integrative approach as counselors. Is we are recognizing that this is not only a mental, emotional, physical challenge that somebody's going through, that their spiritual life is a part of that, and spiritual forces are part of that. I like to think of counseling and therapy as a tool that God has given us by His grace to be able to have some really kind of targeted ways of providing help in those areas where we are affected by sin and brokenness. So it's not the only tool, but it's a really effective tool that God's given us to be able to work with those different parts of how He made us, like our minds and our hearts and our bodies and that sort of thing. And certainly, with that, we are all convinced, both by just theological conviction, but also experience, that we can't really get anywhere on our own without the primary guiding of the Holy Spirit. So whether we are talking about that directly and being explicit about that in counseling, as far as how we approach it, depends a bit on the presentation or the situation, temperament of each person that we're in front of. But within our own spirit, within our own heart, we are always, in conversation with the Spirit and in cooperation in following the Spirit and prayerfully caring for those that we're in front of. So we see that as can't do anything without that. We had a professor, I think we all three had a professor that would talk frequently about the third person in the room for counseling. So you have the counselor, the counselee, and then the Holy Spirit that's sort of superintending over the whole thing. And he drew a lot of diagrams, so it was very drilled into our heads. But it's a great. We have another therapist on our staff that actually she keeps an open chair in her counseling space. That's the chair for the Holy Spirit to be in. And I think she is always mindful of that, and sometimes she and the client talk about that. But it's just a physical way of representing that reality. So would you guys add anything to that?
Go ahead. Yeah, no, I think that covered a lot. I think also it highly depends on the comfortability of the client too. And I think at least for me personally, some clients I want prayer to be part of the beginning of session to kind of set the tone. Others have experienced a lot of unfortunately hardship within their church community, and so just being sensitive to that is also part of the spiritual work as well, to provide healing, an experience that is helpful and calming and peaceful, as opposed to maybe some of what they experienced within their church backgrounds in the past.
Yeah, maybe I'll speak to a little bit, just practically speaking, maybe how I've tried to distinguish between mental health care and the spiritual warfare piece, because we definitely know it's a reality. One thing that can be helpful is being able to really clearly define the roles between counselor, mental health worker, and church kind of leaders, pastoral staff, and whatnot. That's something we like to clarify in the room, even as people start out, just because sometimes there can be blurred boundaries in terms of the role of a counselor and that of a pastor. Or theologian or professor. And so it's helpful to sometimes just make that distinction. And we know that there can be a lot of overlaps in how spiritual warfare presents, and some clinical conditions like depression or anxiety, panic, and whatnot. But again, being able to really clearly distinguish between our role and that of the church or wider Christian faith community helps us know, when do we, how much do we, address in the counseling room, and what do we really clearly define as, okay, this is something that maybe would be more helpful or appropriate for you to address with a close, pastor or mentor, small group leader, something like that. And yeah, for what it's worth, I would say where spiritual warfare, can, just, I guess in simplest terms, be maybe just the idea of, the reality of where truth is being attacked and we are tempted to believe otherwise, falsehood, anything, that is counter-scriptural, counter-Christ. And so that sometimes can breed a lot of different lies or thought processes in our minds. And so I think there can be overlap with the work that we do in counseling. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy, we do a lot of cognitive restructuring and identifying intrusive thoughts and things like that. And so part of the integrative work is being able to use scriptural truths to combat some of these things. And that's part of that, the kind of the hefty work of counseling, and to see, again, like Jessica was saying, how much are people open to that, and will just, do as much as is appropriate for that case. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
I wonder if you would just speak a little bit about the appropriate place in which to draw boundaries and then the enforcing of those boundaries. Just a quick example. So, a person in the church diagnosed with schizophrenia on medication constantly wants to rehash the same conversation for the last 10 years about Vietnam, Agent Orange, the Pentagon being shaped in the pentagram shape, so it's satanic. Recently, can I talk to you after the men's breakfast? No, can't meet then. Well, can I go in your office and talk? No, can't do that now. Can I come over to the parsonage and talk? No, can't do that now. My wife's having her quiet time. Drive home, drives up. Well, can I at least come in the garage and talk? No, can't do that now. And then I'm left feeling not very Christ-like. I know that might be my problem, but I wonder if you just help speak about, enforcing those kind of boundaries in an appropriate way for somebody who is definitely facing a mental health issue.
That's a great one. This is why I brought them, so.
I'll start so that I can set the bar really low. With that particular case, that's really tough because I understand wanting to be there for a congregant and still also needing your own personal boundaries. And I think with boundaries in general, just talking broad, oftentimes what's helpful to keep in mind is boundaries is basically a limit of where I end and the other person begins. So what is my capacity? What is my fence? What feels doable for me? If that means I can't have a conversation after every single one of these moments, what is a time that does feel appropriate that I would meet with another congregant or person? And also checking in with yourself of what are you providing for yourself after those conversations to take care of your own mental health, because those are very draining conversations. And I think at the end of the day, with boundaries in general, we teach people how to treat us based on what we allow. And that's what is helpful about a boundary, of if I'm going to continue to allow you to take my time, as humans, we're just going to want more. That's just how we are. And so it's really about how am I loving this person even in a way that maybe doesn't look loving to them, but is loving nonetheless. And also caring for myself in the process of, Jesus saying, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So can't do part of that without also caring for your own spiritual and mental health.
Yeah, and so, part of boundaries, I think, is something, maybe I'll speak from a more of just the being in the church, kind of serving in the church kind of context of ministry. I think a big struggle is being able to acknowledge boundaries, because a lot of times in Christian community, we know that, we want to be loving and caring and kind and even loving unconditionally, right? And kind of what does that mean? But I do think that boundaries is something that's really necessary and healthy. And so a lot of times, kind of like to pitch it as boundaries are meant to protect, not harm. So a lot of times I think it's hard to say no because we're afraid that if we say no, we're not being Christian enough or, loving, and this person's gonna, get hurt. But there's a really good book on boundaries called Boundaries by Cloud Townsend. Yeah, and so, it provides a really good picture of what it means to, understand the role of boundaries in protecting, right, relationships. And so imagine like a yard, right? Like if there's a fence in the yard, generally speaking, that's a good thing, right? Like it helps us know where our yard and lawn ends and the neighbors and so, but coming back to kind of, your question of, what do you do when someone's kind of just really persistent and whatnot? I would say it's probably whether, or counselors or pastors or, youth leaders, whatnot. I think being able to just recognize like what are appropriate limits, right, for ourselves, and being able to really set apart times that are solely given to, kind of caring for others, caring ministry or whatnot, almost like office hours, right? So I think that could be helpful, is just to have something set like that, and it's posted, it's written, and you can just like redirect the people to that kind of time frame, that window, if need be. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is it sounds like you're doing really well with it, honestly. And just, I think a quick point on issues like schizophrenia too that can be particularly challenging. I've heard so many examples of people within a church with schizophrenia, so that seems like people with schizophrenia find very comfortable in churches, which thankfully. But in the time that maybe you do allow to engage with them, like one rule of thumb that we think about with somebody who's not really oriented to reality, like a person with schizophrenia is to not really challenge their beliefs or their perception of things. We don't want to like get into disputing that because it's a never-ending thing, sometimes more distressing to them. But I also don't want to kind of engage too much with it. We don't want to go down the rabbit trail with it. And so usually what we're trying to do with that is to just sort of hear it, but then find something more like in the immediate, like kind of present tense to try to talk to them about. And that can be very ordinary stuff like, how's your day going today? What'd you have for breakfast? Did you get outside today? Things like that, just kind of bringing it back into like more grounded reality, and just not getting sucked into, because there's never going to be an end point for those conversations for them.
I was just going to say that our perceptions of what we think is loving might be not loving.
That's true. Yeah.
Because we have to sober up. We have to listen to the Holy Spirit, and we have to learn. Because why is he hounding or stalking that minister? Are we disclosing our limitations and making sure that their external support system is working? Like you said, you're redirecting them into the here and now. But also you want to make sure that they know you're the minister. You want to see, did you want us to talk about whatever the support systems you might have, or something, because we need to address what they need. And that need may not be you.
Right. Yeah. True. Yeah. Thank you for adding that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
My name is Alan Grill. I know the focus has been on youth and young families. I am not obviously a youth. In fact, my pastor thinks I helped Noah build the ark.
Thank you. Thanks for your help.
But I'm wondering if you have any insight or statistics about anxiety and depression in folks my age. I know I just moved into an assisted living facility, and there was a lot of distress and anxiety in that move, and I'm wondering if you have any insight into that in people my age.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know specifics. Maybe Jessica or Christina do, but I know in general prevalence is very high, especially in like later stages of aging. There's so much loss and change that's happening during that time of life, and like if there's a lack of sufficient support for youth in terms of mental health care, I would say almost more so is true for seniors. And there's also generally more reluctance to reaching out too, because they maybe have more mixed feelings about it, or it just hasn't, like, they don't have the same kind of cultural norms about it. So I'm glad you asked. That's an incredibly challenging season of life. Yeah. Do you guys have any experience with that, or?
I don't know statistics wise, but I would just echo what Matt said. I think the need is even more probably for seniors. And I was just thinking along the lines of what you said of just it is a transitional loss, and I think it's really just important to acknowledge that there's a grief that comes with that, with any sort of transition. I think we just often associate grief with, death of a loved one, but it's a lot more complicated, complex, and profound than that. And so I just think there's an important piece of acknowledging that transitional grief that happens that can kind of increase feelings of anxiety or depression because your whole world is changing. And naturally that would cause anyone to feel really anxious. Yeah.
I think like in a place like an assisted living facility or just like a council on aging type of program, a lot of times they will have social workers that are on staff with those programs or those facilities, and that's a big part of what their role is to kind of be a support for folks as they're going through those kind of transitions. So definitely good to seek those out as they're available. And then there also are outpatient counselors who do actually specialize in seniors, and so I don't have a name off the top of my head, but I know they're out there. And for what it's worth, we've seen a number of clients who are 60 plus, and it's a really awesome counseling experience. And we've seen couples that are in their 70s, and first time in couples counseling, and it's great. It's a lot of fun. Yes, one in the back. Yes.
Yeah, I've been flirting with the idea of starting a lay counseling ministry in our church, and I wondered if you had any experience helping churches do that, along the lines of what you said at the end about having healthy partnerships with other care providers. It sounds like a big undertaking, but I can also see that it would help, if the pastor is like the sole person you can speak to, it becomes a bottleneck in a larger church. And then when we turn around and make a referral, there's often a large wait. And so those congregants are kind of stuck in the middle. So just any thoughts you have on lay
Absolutely.
counseling ministries?
Yeah. Christina, was that at all part of what you were working on with your church?
It was a little bit. It was primarily with the youth pastor, and it was more kind of where needs had arisen, and so I do think that it can be helpful, like a kind of starting step, right? But also probably a really significant piece of that is the equipping, right? The training and equipping. Just because of kind of a little bit of what we've hit on today too, right? Just the vast diversity of needs that come through, and it's like it runs a spectrum of mild to severe crisis, right? So I think probably being able to field for interest and passion, right, and how the internal resources of the church, how many people are like-minded, like-hearted, and really taking some time and maybe vision casting and deliberations of what do the resources look like, and setting some good realistic expectations of what would training and equipping look like, and also distinguishing between what would lay counseling, the boundaries of that be, the limitations to that, and when to refer out if need be. And so, but I do think it can be a really helpful ministry, in the church overall, if there's kind of buy-in and enough of a core group that is willing to engage in the training equipping process.
Yeah, you may be familiar with this already, but there's a program called Stephen's Ministry, and it's a great I would say like infrastructure for lay counseling, because they have a lot of that kind of structure and equipping built into the program itself. And there's a church, I think within this network, First Congregational in Wakefield. I think they're one of y'all. But I spoke with their Stevens Ministry group back in the fall, and so that was a group of six or seven, I think, lay counselors from the staff. Their primary thing is they just care about people and they want to spend time with them. But they have a great setup because there's a way to get started. There's a kind of set process to it. They know what the limits of that role is as far as like what kind of input and direction are we giving, when do we need to refer on to more professional level counseling. And so that kind of a thing is a great model if you would want to look into that. I have one gentleman up front that I know has been in the he's got a loud voice. He can speak up. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. Hi there.
Hi. I just didn't see you.
Good to see you. Go Bruins.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
Go Bruins. Yeah. Let's hope.
My name is Shawn Ranlett, pastor's wife from the Boscawen Congregational Church in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire is a little bit different than the population level that we encounter when we see the Welcome to Massachusetts sign. And there's a lot of people and a lot more resources. So we're in central New Hampshire. And I'd just like to speak to, coming from somebody who's a youth leader and pastor's wife and prayer intercessory minister, there are absolutely times where we're encountering people that really could benefit from some ongoing counseling. My frustration has been for a long time, how do we find people to refer to? And part of being a good shepherd is you don't want to send your sheep to yahoos who are coming, I'm sorry, but that's essential, from yahoos that don't share our faith tradition. I understand there's a difference between somebody who's doing immediate crisis, get the fire out, the house is on fire, but we're talking about ongoing counseling. How do we find and vet counselors? I don't want to send my 14-year-old who's in youth group to somebody who has a completely different pagan, atheistic, or shamanistic worldview. I don't want to send them to that kind of counselor. And I want to know that the counselors that I'm sending to are accountable to a good, solid church community and authority, that they themselves are walking and practicing. And so that's a real concern as people who are shepherding other people. It's like, well, send them to the professionals because any professional is better than what you do. Absolutely not. So you understand that frustration.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And how do we go about finding and vetting them so that we have people that we can trust and even get to know a little bit so we understand where they're coming from, so we feel like we can send them to them?
Sure, yeah. I think I know of a couple Christian counseling practices in southern New Hampshire, so that's probably not close enough to central. They do. Yeah, most of them do. And you can reach out to us, and I'd be happy to share their names with you. Yeah. And these are solid Christian practices. And beyond that, I would say, like, as far as the vetting process, there's the idea that I kind of threw out there earlier of reaching out to other churches to ask if they have a referral list too, or where do you send people? Maybe you've already done that though. I think if you are able to search and find somehow people that identify as a Christian as counselors or therapists, you can check their a website or a Psychology Today profile and try to get a sense for like the presence of faith in their practice. Because, like, for instance, if you go to our website, it's pretty clear where we're coming from as far as a faith practice. So a lot of times that will be written into their how they present themselves as professionals. Beyond that, I would say you should feel welcome to reach out to counselors and ask to meet them. They would see you, hopefully. I mean, they're sometimes very busy, but they would see you as hopefully a welcome referral source for them, honestly, and want to understand just how they approach things and ask them some of those kind of open-hearted questions to try to get a sense for how they think about counseling. So try to reach out. I think that's totally appropriate. Not everybody will respond, but if you can find some that do, I think that's a great connection point. And yeah. Gordon Conwell, too, by the way, has a referral list. The counseling department does. That includes New Hampshire. So you could reach out to the counseling department there, and they would share that list with you, too. But we love it when pastors and church leaders reach out to us and want to get to know us. We're all about that. Not at all. We are on the same team. Yeah.
I'm glad you asked your question first, because mine is a bit of a follow-up to that.
Good.
So, okay, real world, you folks have to get paid. So what are the costs? How much? How often is it covered by insurance? I know that'll depend upon the individual. And you mentioned you work in Massachusetts. What are your particular organization's geographical limits? And what are some suggested strategies for making a referral to someone who has never had any counseling before, and in my judgment, it's needed?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll answer the first practical ones, and then you guys can take the last one there. But yeah, for us at Harbor, we're a private pay model, so we don't work directly with insurance providers. There's a lot of reasons for that, but we are at the same time very committed to maintaining a really high degree of accessibility for people at all levels of income. So we have a sliding scale for that. So it goes up to the high hundreds per session for certain individuals that are at a full income, and then scales quite low, and it's made available to every person. We don't have a limited number of spots. So if you come in and you're eligible, you get the sliding scale. And we have folks that are in graduate school, have no income, folks that are unemployed that are able to make it work. We also have a scholarship program for folks who, even on the sliding scale, can't afford it, so they can apply for a scholarship that gives them about usually 5 to 6 months at least of quite discounted counseling, and that's funded through a nonprofit that we run on the side of the counseling center. As far as insurances go, most people, depending on their plan, but most people that are working with a licensed clinician, which is about half of our staff, are usually able to file for out-of-network reimbursement for that too, which is something we can help them do. So, but I would just emphasize that accessibility is a very important thing to us, and so we also work directly with churches that want to support the cost of counseling for a limited number of sessions for their people too. So we've done that a lot of times, and we have some churches that we do it over and over again with them, and so that's about that. You guys want to speak to the? Oh yeah, we also have an internship program with Gordon Conwell, counseling interns, and that's close to free for counseling too. And that there's no limit to sessions for that people can do it as long as they need to. And it's all supervised by licensed folks. You guys want to speak to what does it look like to make a referral as a church leader?
I can go first. I think it's first kind of going back to what Matt was even saying in his presentation of just really normalizing mental health is a key part, because I think sometimes when making a referral, it can come across, even if it's well-intentioned, as you need help or you need more help than I can give you, and that can cause a person to feel like there's something wrong with them that other people haven't gone through. And so I think it's really important to normalize on a broader scale for your congregation mental health, like Matt was talking about in preaching or having a lay counseling program or things like that, but also building relationship with someone and wanting to refer them out honestly looks often like acknowledging your own limitations as opposed to the person having a problem. I think it can come down to, hey, this is where my area of expertise ends, and connecting them with people who are trustworthy resources that you feel like either other congregants have gone to, of course not disclosing names, but just saying, I know people who have had really good experiences with counseling can really just normalize it. And also, if as long as you're comfortable in sharing, if you've been to counseling and it's been helpful, that can just be so mind-blowing for people to know, okay, other people have gone through this, other people have tried this, other people have found it helpful. We just want to know we're not alone a lot of the time, and I think that goes a long way in making referrals of we know other people or we ourselves have been in that place. In fact, in our graduate program, all counseling students are recommended to do counseling themselves, because we can't expect people to be comfortable in a room that we haven't stepped into on the other side. Yeah.
Okay. I have, I'll keep my mouth closed, but I've been burning, sorry. The American Association of Christian Counselors that you guys are probably a part of.
Yep.
They received a grant. Already 80 countries are involved in this. If you're in a Christian church, you can take the mental health coaching certification program that's taught by practitioners.
Yeah, that's great.
20 to 30 degree years of experience helping people in mental health. And they're all Christians, psychiatrists, psychologists, talk therapists. So it's aacc.net. Look up the mental health coaching certification. 64 classes, though. It'll take a good 6 months for someone to get through it, because you get certified.
Should have left that part out.
Yeah. No, but guess what? It's free.
Yeah, it's great.
And 80 countries, think about it, how much need there is in the world. 80 countries have already stepped forward to take these programs. And I've taken the gerontology program also, certification in biblical counseling certification, and now I'm in life coaching. But gerontology, man, suicide by men is like up, because men have guns and they can quickly kill themselves. I mean, it's an adjustment in life, finding meaning and purpose when you're older, when you're having all kinds of loss. Those are issues, and I'm sure your people can help them with. The Lord Jesus helps us, man. He helps us, but there are needs out there within a congregation, and it's not going to be handled. We have pastoral, you've been called, you've been seasoned, you've been trained, you've been raising up people, but we all have our limitations.
Thank you for adding that. That's a great resource. Probably have time for two more questions. We'll see. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Bob Fenn. I've been doing nursing home ministry for over 30 years now, and most of the people that I deal with are not in their 50s and 60s. They're in their mid-90s to well over 100 now. Well over 100, many. And what I have found is when I come to a point, without actually giving a necessary referral, but I realize that they need more help beyond my expertise, I'm very careful, because it's often taken a long time to build an initial relationship of trust with this person for them to open up. I never say I'm handing you off, but that I would be willing to partner with extra resources who are better trained than I am, but I will be partnering with them, and you and I will still be together in this. And that seems to go a long ways, that they're not being handed off as something that's too difficult, but that it's just I'm forming a partnership and bringing in reinforcements. So I found that has been very helpful.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think that's a great way of describing it. Yeah.
Sorry, it may be more of another comment question.
That's good.
I was trained when making referrals to make sure that there were at least 2, preferably 3 referrals, and to add a disclaimer that it's still the congregant's duty to do due diligence, to get to know the counselor and that it's not a guarantee of success, just from a legal protection standpoint. Is that still the case?
It seems reasonable, yeah, yeah.
Passes a reasonable man test.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, I mean, it's, these people put a lot of trust in you. And sometimes maybe elevate that to a level of like guarantee or something, which is probably not helpful, but also maybe there's a liability there. So I think that's very, very good to have a range, to even setting like appropriate expectations for what counseling looks like. Some counselors are a fit for some people in some cases, you know, and figuring out that fit is a process a lot of times. And also, I think another expectation, just to name too, is like you're not going to go to, for most people, you're not going to go to one counseling session and it's all going to be better, you know. It's a process. So if you feel like there's a fit there, I would usually encourage people to say, give it a try for 5-6 sessions, see what's happening with that. But just setting that expectation of like one session is not a good gauge necessarily of if it's working or not. Thank you for adding that.
I have a question, sir. I'm just, you know, and it's a follow-up for Steve's question, Steve Carlisle. Like, is your counseling, is Harbor counseling third-party reimbursable? Just, you know, like, will Medicaid or, for example, in another state, New Hampshire Health or Maine Health, will they pay for your services? And does Christian counseling usually come, you know, with third-party reimbursability?
It's, well, not out of Massachusetts for us. Most insurance coverage out of state would not approve that. But for us, again, we would support out-of-network reimbursement. That just varies based on the plan and the provider. So it's hard to speak to specifics around that. And that's just for licensed counselors too. Yeah. Now we had one other question up front here.
Yeah, I have a question regarding accessibility of services. Maybe you can speak in terms of are you taking clients, for example? Because as you mentioned, one statistic that you had is 100% increase in using mental health facilities and help. I think one of the frustrations that I have experienced is just trying to find a Christian counseling that will take you. They're available, but not available to take new clients. So I think one of the things is that this increase of people, it's good for business, of course, on that side, but then it hurts accessibility from the church standpoint. So maybe you can speak into that.
Sure, yeah, well, it's good for business in some ways, but it's also not, because people disengage if they have to wait for too long. So we really try to keep that moving as quickly as we can. Jessica, and I'm mindful of time. I know we need to wrap up pretty soon, but maybe we have one last question after this. But Jessica helped coordinate our intake process for a period of time. So I wonder if you can speak to just how we handle wait lists and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we are, well, just in general, Harbor Christian is always accepting new clients because we recognize the need. And we really try to work hard to, within 2 to 3 weeks, connect people to counselors on our team. And the delay on that often would look like specification. If someone, only wanted in person or could only meet at a particular day and time, that's what would maybe keep things a little bit more prolonged on when they got connected. But both when I was doing it and then who our intake coordinator is, who trained me, is constantly in contact to make sure that there's still interest and also availability and possibility to connect. In our referral form, we ask, do you have any specifics? That could be anything from I only want a female counselor to I am only available on Tuesdays. And Megan and I both would still offer in case something outside of that came up, just in case, it was maybe more a need than they realized and they wanted to get connected sooner. But otherwise, yeah, generally it would be if there was specific needs that had to be met, then that would take a little bit longer. But we really generally connect people within, 2 to 3, sometimes up to 4 weeks, but we've kept it within a month, which is really good compared to a lot of other places. We really try to do that.
Yeah, and I usually tell people, if even outside of Harbor, if you can find a provider or practice that has a wait list and keeps up with it, just get on it, you know, because if they manage it, then the time will pass, the need will still be there, and that's the time to get in, you know. There are other providers who just are full and they're not accepting new clients. That's a different kind of case, but I think if you can find somebody that has a wait list, just jump on it as soon as you can, and then in our case, we do everything we can to keep it moving, and we know the urgency of those requests. Yes, last question.
Thank you. My question is for college students, and I know that you are affiliated, if I heard correctly, with Gordon College. Is there anything are you affiliated with any other colleges outside of Massachusetts? Because I know the need is great when your kids go off to college and everything gets sort of cut off medically, and whatever they're doing on college campuses, there is a huge separation. So if they had anxiety and depression before, telehealth doesn't cross state lines, if I'm correct, or maybe now it does. I know during COVID it did not, but is there any advice that you can give towards how we can help our college students?
Yeah, we at Harbor ourselves, we don't have direct partnerships with. We have maybe with one small school in Boston, but we see college students all the time. They're mostly Massachusetts and Boston area colleges, and they're what you just described there. Their parents reach out on their behalf and set them up with us. Outside of Massachusetts, we really don't. Sometimes if we have folks whose permanent address is in Massachusetts, but they're in school, as long as we can start with them locally, we might have some flexibility around them being out of state. But there's certain issues where it's just as beneficial as telehealth can be. In some cases, it's not a great fit, you know, especially if somebody's, for instance, away from home and very isolated. It's probably better for them to see a counselor in person, you know. So I don't know. There's some nuances around that. Yeah. Would you guys add anything to that?
Most colleges now have a counseling center, so I would recommend just encouraging your child to reach out, get on a wait list.
And they'll have referral lists, too.
Yes, exactly.
Including faith preference usually, too. Yeah.
I think part of it is, one last thing is just, as parents, churches are sending high school seniors into freshman year of college and whatnot, is really scoping out, you know, those college towns and, you know, trying to help kids connect not only to the counseling centers on campus, but also local churches or fellowships. And so I think that can be really helpful as part of even the college app process. I know a lot of times focusing on the academic piece and whatnot, but campus life and looking at the campus, what it has to offer for student life. And the locale is really, I think, a crucial step too.
Thank you guys so much. It's great to hear your heart for these things, and thank you for these great questions. If you would ever want to follow up with other questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us. You can go to that website up there. We also left some postcards on the table out front if you want to grab one that has our email address, our website on it. Tells you more about Harbor, tells you about our church partnership program too. So would encourage you to grab one of those. But thank you so much for having us today.
How about a big round of applause for Matt?